All right. Well, thank you all so very much for joining. I'm really excited to be here with all of you. And this is a topic that I'm particularly passionate about. So I'll kick us off just by briefly introducing myself. My name is Suzie Aragon, and I have been a certified holistic nutritionist for coming up on 5 years now. And why I'm so passionate about this particular field is having members of my family, like my grandmother passed away from type 2 diabetes. I've personally struggled with some autoimmune illnesses. So I am just such a true believer that there's so many people that need help and want this information. And we see what's going on in the news. We know that food can be poison, but it can also be medicine. And really, the difference between a holistic nutritionist and a regular nutritionist is just that additional education around disease prevention and even in some cases reversal. And that's done really all through diet. I also have special certification in autoimmunity as well as gut health. So you can just imagine how excited I am to be here with all of you today to talk about the benefits of an anti-inflammatory diet, as well as talking about the principles of gut health. So really excited to get into it. We will not need the full hour today. I really wanted to make this content very simple, very digestible, no pun intended, because there's a lot of information out there and it can be very overwhelming. So everybody's at a different part in their health and healing journey, as well as their knowledge. So we'll probably only need about a half hour today. I want to give plenty of time at the end for any questions, comments, or discussion you want to have. But I'll also be stopping throughout the way just to check in and see if everybody's feeling good with the content, any questions that might pop up. If you're shy, you can also pop your questions into the chat and I'll be sure to answer them either along the way or at the very end. But what I also want to say is we're friends here. So I'm not formal. If you need me to repeat something, you have a question in the moment, you're like, hey, Suzie, slow down. Feel free to unmute yourself and absolutely jump in. All right. So if we feel good with that, we'll go ahead and we'll get everything kicked off. So let's start with the very basics. What is inflammation? Well, there are two different types of inflammation. And the first type is, that temporary inflammation that's acute when we acquire a sudden injury, a cut, infection, fever, kind of things like that. But it's temporary. It goes away when the body's done its job healing that area. There's also chronic inflammation. So with chronic inflammation, this is prolonged due to diet, illness, or something autoimmune. And over time, this can cause damage to our cells and tissue. And this is the root cause of so many different health concerns. And this is the type of inflammation we're going to be covering today. All right, just admitting a few more people in the waiting room. All right, and we're going to move right along. So here's what you can expect in today's information. This is what we can look forward to learning. So first of all, we're going to cover the benefits of an anti-inflammatory diet. Foods that you can incorporate that are easy to work into your weekly meal plans. Foods to avoid or to limit. We'll go into great detail the effects they have on the body. And then how do you know if maybe you're suffering from some chronic inflammation due to dietary choices? I'll cover some recipe inspiration, just some little thought process starters on how easy it is for these healthy ingredients to work them into some of our meal preps. And then finally, gut health and its impact on chronic inflammation. So we've got some real good stuff to cover today. So let's jump right in. So why this type of diet? Let's talk about just a few of the benefits of an anti-inflammatory diet. So aiding the system in supporting the immunity. So proper nutrition helping our immune system sounds like a no-brainer, but it also helps healing process by providing cell repair and antioxidants. So this benefits your long-term health as well. reducing stress on the body. So inflammation just in itself is putting your body in a stressful state. And data shows that healing is delayed or compromised entirely the longer we stay in that stress state. Lowers risk for chronic illness. We already talked a little bit about how chronic inflammation is known to be the root cause for several different health ailments. So, no wonder that adopting this type of diet and lifestyle will help lower your risk for some of those. And then weight management. I think just inherently, we're eating more healthy, natural, whole foods. That is going to keep our weight absolutely in check. But just thinking about taking the body out of an inflammatory state, this is going to help for better metabolic function, produce more energy. So lots of benefits that go into that weight management piece. Just a bonus, right? And then contributing to better mental health. So later on in the presentation, when we start talking about gut health, you'll really understand the connection there, how they can impact each other. Trying to get it moving along. Okay, so what are some of these indicators we talked about that might show we are suffering with some chronic inflammation? So, stiff or sore joints that are constant, not due to any sports injuries or anything like that. Skin issues, such as frequent rashes or unidentifiable hives that tend to pop up. Digestive issues, such as bloating and discomfort. Chronic fatigue, swelling or bloating, consistent headaches that pop up out of nowhere, frequent infections, and then depression and anxiety. So, just keeping in mind that, of course, some of these things can be attributed to other health conditions. However, if you're seeing that you have multiple things on this list and have identified maybe some inflammatory things in your diet, this is where we can do some work to make some of those positive changes. So let's talk about what some of these food culprits are. And I have a feeling that none of this is going to be really shocking when you see some of the things on the list, but there are a couple of interesting things that some new data has come out on. So this next page is what I like to call the don't shoot the messenger page, because we have some favorite things that are on here, maybe some things we're kind of surprised to see on here. But let's start with our top offender, which is processed foods. So processed foods, those are the highly palatable, delicious little devils like Doritos, Oreos, all those things that are packed with all sorts of unnatural chemicals that your body just doesn't know what to do with. It doesn't know how to process them. So it deploys an inflammatory response that encapsulates those food toxins to process them through the liver or store in your fat cells. So all sorts of functionary things are going on there when you consume processed foods. Next is sugar. So, sugar is the hardest thing for most people to kick because it's addictive. That's by design. But what happens when we consume these high amounts of sugar is it spikes your blood sugar levels and triggers a release of these inflammatory molecules called cytokines. So, there's a direct reaction that happens when we consume sugar, not to mention sugar is a favorite food of the bad bacteria in our gut, and we don't want to feed that. With fried foods, I think we can skip over fried foods and talk directly about seed oils, because what makes fried foods such an offender on the list is the oil that it's fried in. So there are good oils, which we're going to talk about next, but those bad oils, we can identify the label will indicate that they are hydrogenated oils. So things such as vegetable, canola, cottonseed, rapeseed oils, peanut oils, those sorts of things, the way that they're processed will elicit an inflammatory response. So moving on to processed meat. So I'm sure you're all kind of seeing and hearing some newer things about processed meats and the effect that it has on your system. So the World Health Organization actually categorizes this processed meat as a group 1 carcinogen. So this is the same category as cigarettes, meaning there's strong evidence that they directly cause cancer. So this includes things like bacon, lunch meat, sausage, anything that has to be cured, and molecules have to be changed in the process. So again, please don't shoot the messenger on that one. But the other one that might be a little bit surprising is red meat. So this one's also newer to the World Health Organization classification. So they are a group 2A carcinogen defined as probable to cause cancer. So they're still gathering data, but it is beginning to indicate that there is an immediate effect on colorectal and digestive cancers, as well as some pancreatic cancer influence. So all things in moderation, but something to definitely cut back on. So all the things on the list, I'm sure alcohol, excess salt, refined carbohydrates like donuts and things like that are not going to be surprising that they're on the list for causing inflammation. Everything on this list shares similar traits that they disrupt your gut microbiome and trigger an immune response within your body. So one thing that I like to say, because it's not all doom and gloom, right? As a nutritionist, I really like to advise balanced, less challenging approach to dietary changes. If you're looking and thinking you need to do a whole overhaul, we know it's just not sustainable. So it's really about adding in the good things first before you start eliminating those bad things that are having an effect. So, for example, for dinner, before you have your fried chicken or your burger, those things that you really struggle to give up, make a deal with yourself that you just eat a big salad first. You can still have what you want, but let's go ahead and get the vegetables in. And over time, what you're going to find is you're not really wanting some of those bad foods quite as much, and it's not going to feel like as much of a sacrifice. Side note, not on this list, but important to note, anything that you're allergic to. Again, that sounds like a no-brainer, but I know quite a few people that are lactose intolerant. Over 60% of the population is lactose intolerant and they fight through it anywhere. Just keep in mind that anytime you have a histamine response to something you're consuming, that is an inflammatory response. So you could be doing damage each time you do it. So worth mentioning on that one. All right, let's get to the good stuff, right? We talked about the things that we really want to limit ourselves on. Let's talk about some of our hero foods. So, fruits and vegetable, I really kept this pretty general as a category. And that's because, no surprise, this should really be the majority of our diet and what we're consuming to ensure we have, enough fiber in our diet to really get that prebiotic feeding to that good bacteria. We want to be consuming 50 different fruits and vegetables in a week to get that good diversity for our gut microbiome. So that sounds like a lot, right? But on the next slide, I'm going to show you some really easy ways to incorporate in all those different fruits and vegetables using the 5 S's. So just hang tight on that one. So starting with some of the vegetables that are really fantastic for anti-inflammation, arugula. So this is a really great low oxalate green, and it's really rich in flavonoids. It's got great flavor. We know it's mixed in tiny amounts in some of our salads, but feel free to go a little bit heavier with arugula. The other one is beets. Love beets. So they prevent oxidative stress and even arthritis. And for athletes, a really fun tip with these is that they aid in muscle recovery and help to improve endurance. And looking at some of the fruits. So I put a little hot tip in here, anything that has like those deeper, more vibrant colors tend to be higher in antioxidants. So go for the rainbow when you're shopping for your produce. But in particular on the fruit side, berries. So those deeper colored berries are going to have the most antioxidants for you. So, for example, blueberries have a compound in them called anthocyanins, which fight oxidative stress and actually radiation, keeps it out of your body. And it even gives you UV protection when you consume it, which is pretty neat. And then other fruits that are really beneficial for fighting inflammation is hydrating fruits like watermelon and cucumber. So these dense hydrating fruits have what's called structured water in them. So what's interesting about that is it's actually 10 times more hydrating to your cells than just regular H2O. So that's also really great if you're active to be consuming some of those. I had to add on the list sprouts. They tend to get forgotten about. But what's really great about sprouts is all cruciferous vegetable sprouts have amazing levels of this compound called polysulfides, which is a really potent antioxidant and provides cell protection. And I had to put a shout out on here for broccoli sprouts in particular. It's a special superstar sprout. Broccoli sprouts are shown to actually increase the length of your telomeres. So, telomeres are the protective caps on your chromosomes that actually get shorter with age and disease. So, by eating broccoli sprouts, you're actually extending your life and extending your health. So, those little guys are really a powerhouse. I have to move on to some of the healthy fats, and I've really got to start with salmon. So, what's great about all of these healthy fats that are listed is that they contain omega 3s. So, omega 3 fatty acids actually work to inhibit the production of inflammatory molecules. So, this is something that daily you want to be working into your meals. So salmon must be wild caught to get all these great benefits. And salmon contains DHA, which improves cell function. And they have an antioxidant called astaxanthin. And that's what gives it that vibrant pink color. And it's actually 100 times more powerful than vitamin C. So I mentioned that first because that's one of the most powerful healthy fats you can put in that has some really great anti-inflammatory benefits. The next is extra virgin olive oil. So that's one of those good oils that I was talking about earlier. It's a mono unsaturated fat that contains oleic acid and vitamin E, and that's going to protect your blood vessels and your gut lining. So it's recommended to have 1 to 2 tablespoons a day of avocado oil to get those great benefits. And one here that's kind of an interesting one.
Excuse me?
Yeah,
Do you mind me asking a question?
absolutely.
When you say olive oil, do you mean like, is that like olive oil you can cook with, or is it like olive oil on a salad, or?
Yeah, really great question. Kate is your name? Am I
Yeah,
pronouncing that right? Kate,
yeah.
really good question. So, with extra virgin olive oil, it does actually bring down its potency and benefits when we cook with it. So, I'm glad you
Mhm.
asked that question. So, what's advisable is to either just take spoonfuls of it or, just as you said, work it into salad dressing, make it the base. So, it's raw, and that way you won't lose all of those benefits. You still
Mhm.
get great benefits when you cook with it, but if
Okay.
you really want to capitalize on it, then keep it away from
Yeah,
heat.
I think there were some folks who were saying like if it gets too hot, like it's like then it's dangerous and whatever. So I wasn't sure, but that's helpful to be clear on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the
Thanks.
question. Really good call out. All right. So the next one that's a really interesting one is coconut oil and coconut milk. This is kind of newer to the conversation in the anti-inflammatory world. So coconut oil is a medium chain saturated fat. So this turns to ketones in your bloodstream after you consume it, and that down regulates inflammation, stabilizes blood sugar, and even fights bad pathogens. So there's some really good anti-parasitic properties when you have coconut oil as well as milk. And what I'll say, before we move on from the healthy fats category, if you are on a weight loss journey as a part of your health and healing journey, just be mindful of portions. Everything in this list comes with really tremendous health benefits, but they also come with a lot of calories. So, for example, nuts, 1/4 cup, which is a small handful, that's going to pack over 100 calories. And even we're talking about olive oil. 1 tablespoon is about 120 calories. So, absolutely have it in your daily diet, but just be mindful of the actual portion size if you are trying to keep calories down. So, just want to make sure I insert that in there too. Moving on to whole grains. So carbs have really gotten a bad rap over the years, but with some of these slow digesting whole grains like brown rice and oatmeal, they actually have a lot of fiber and balance your blood sugar when you consume them. They have antioxidants, iron, potassium, magnesium. So feel free, have a nice bowl of oatmeal with some coconut milk, berries and nuts. It's extremely gut healthy. And I added spices on here. This is just such a quick, easy way. Add these to some of your meals and your drinks to get that extra spike of anti-inflammatory benefits. I think everybody's heard about turmeric being, kind of a powerhouse in that realm. So if you are using the spice, just make sure you add a little black pepper with it that helps it to activate and metabolize. But what's great about turmeric is if you're not a fan of the flavor of the spice, you can take it as a supplement as well. Ginger and garlic, they are actually great. They fight against bacteria aside from inflammation. And then cinnamon is really great for regulating blood sugar. So just some quick, easy ways to really incorporate those. And then the final one on the list is bone broth. So bone broth contains collagen and glucosamines. And these are things that help to lubricate and heal your joints as well as repair gut lining. So I find bone broth a great way to use it too is when you're breaking a fast. So, I know sometimes when you're going through chemotherapy, it can be advisable to do a fast. It helps to mitigate the side effects of it. Or even if you're just going through any type of illness, a fast can be beneficial. When you've done all that good work in healing your gut, breaking your fast with a bone broth will just be that much more helpful in helping to support your gut health. All right. So before we move on, I just want to pause. I think I've been going on a roll and I have not paused quite enough just to check in if anybody has any questions so far.
Does that do those spices, does it count if it's like tea, like turmeric tea?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Good question. And a couple of them are worked into a few of the recipes that I'm going to mention
Okay.
coming up.
Cool.
All right. So we'll keep it rolling. Try to keep it rolling. All right, here we go. So now we're going to take our new food knowledge and give you some inspiration to incorporate some healthy meals into your week. So I know right now, depending on what time zone you're in, it's around dinner time. And I had to rub it in with some pictures of these are some meals that I've made and I like to share on social media. So sorry for rubbing it in if you're getting hungry, but let's go ahead and roll with the inspiration here. So earlier, I said the easiest way to get your diversity of vegetables and fruits in your diet is with the 5 S's. And I stand by these. This is just the simplest way: soups, stews, salads, stir fries, and smoothies. So we've got some good examples of a few of those on here. But one of them I have to really call out is down at the bottom, the Sardinian soup. So this is from, the blue zones around the world. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's where these community of people have the lowest rates of chronic illnesses and have the longest lifespans. So one of those areas is in Sardinia, and this family that lives there makes this soup every day. And the family members have lived on average to be 100 years old. So I'm not sure if it's the mix of vegetables, but you can go online and Google Sardinian soup and you'll find all sorts of different variations. Some of them, have little pastas in them. Some of them have pinto beans. But what's great is this is a good base, and then just add whatever vegetables you want. You've got that nice bone broth in there, and you can really make it your own. But soup is such an easy way to throw in all sorts of vegetables. And then all the spices we talked about. Turmeric is really great in this soup, loaded up with garlic and onions, which are antibacterial as well, and great for your immune system. The other one that I love on here is the Breakfast of Wellness Champions. So, avocado toast. So, avocado itself, extremely anti inflammatory, great fat, but being on top of sourdough. I love sourdough. It's a very low gluten bread. And because it's partially fermented, it's really great for your gut health as well. And this is a good way to incorporate some of those sprouts. They taste amazing on top of it, but sprouts can, of course, get mixed into your salads and different things like that. And for a fun drink, so the golden latte, if you've never tried this, this is one of those things that you can't knock it till you try it. If you are a fan of like a chai latte, flavored drink, this is delicious. It's sweet, creamy, spicy, but it's made with literally almost all the ingredients that we talked about for an anti-inflammatory diet. So this is really nice at night because the turmeric, the ginger, the cinnamon, those will have really calming effects on your digestive system. So if you're someone who gets a little tumultuous tummy at night, that's a really great way to kind of wind down. Or if you've had something earlier in the day that was really quite inflammatory, that's a good way to help start to counteract that and get your digestive system sort of back on track. So, speaking of gut health, we're talking about sourdough and all of that. It kind of is a great way to segue us into our final topic, which is gut health. So, why is it so absolutely critical to fighting inflammation? And I think we're more and more making this connection with gut health and the rest of our immune system. So, firstly, the immune system regulation. So, you may have heard in the past, that your gut is your second brain. And the reason this is true is because of your vagus nerve. So, your vagus nerve runs directly between your brain and your gut and facilitates communication between the two. And surprisingly, 80% of that communication comes from your gut to your brain. So, guess who's calling the shots majority of the time? So, if your gut is inflamed, constant immune response signals will be deployed from your brain and can start to cause autoimmune issues over time. The second thing is leaky gut. So you may have heard this term, and it's only recently been recognized by the medical community, and it's officially called intestinal permeability, which simply put, this just means bad bacteria, stress, and inflammation. They make tiny little holes in your gut lining where food particles, bacteria, and toxins can enter your bloodstream, causing, you guessed it, inflammation, along with a myriad of other illnesses. And then the final piece is poor nutrient absorption. So when bad bacteria has outnumbered your good bacteria, this imbalance can be known as dysbiosis or SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And this really disrupts your nutrient absorption and can lead to deficiencies in things like B12 and vitamin D, those essential vitamins which help in disease prevention. So, some indicators that you might have a disrupted gut, some things that you experience maybe pretty regularly, like bloating, changes in stool, belly pain, loss of appetite, constant nausea. These can all be indicators that perhaps you're suffering with an imbalance in the gut. And there's plenty of stool tests and things like that that can really measure what's going on. So you can right side it with diet or supplements. So, looking at tips for maintaining a healthy gut, I mean, great news, my friends. We've already covered the basics for eating an anti inflammatory diet. So, aside from bringing down inflammation in your body, it is going to be so gut friendly. So, foods that are rich in fiber, fruits, vegetables, and those healthy fats. Some other things you can do to help really improve your gut health is consuming fermented and probiotic rich foods. So things like sauerkraut, kimchi, yogurt, kefir, those are very probiotic rich and help to feed the good bacteria. And then managing stress. So this one may sound odd, but stress impacts more than just your mental health. It actually has a physical response from your body. Stress can even cause things such as yeast overgrowth in your stomach. So it's really critical that we get our mind under control as well. So things like spending time in nature, meditating, yoga, going for walks, spending time in therapy, really important to keep our stress under control. And then the next one sounds obvious, prioritizing quality sleep. We know that it's important to our immune system, but getting that rest actually, when we sleep, that is when all of our bodily functions regulate, even out, fix any issues from the day. So getting that quality sleep has to be key. And then finally, exercising regularly. So, again, may seem like what does that have to do with your gut health? But when we are improving our blood flow, it gets our system moving. That's why it's advisable after you eat a meal to go for a 20 to 30-minute walk. It helps to balance your blood sugar, but it also helps your digestive system to get moving so it can process things, absorb nutrients, and avoid any discomfort. So, motion is absolutely the way to go. All right, everyone. So we have come to the end of the presentation. And as I said, covered a lot of good stuff. I want to leave time for if there's any additional questions, thoughts, or follow-up. So I'll open it up to the group. And oh my gosh, I didn't realize my camera was off. Let me make sure I can look at you. All right. Any questions or thoughts anyone has? I think we might have something in the chat here. Let me just check. Just wondering, will we get a copy of the presentation? That's a good question. I would absolutely be happy to convert it to a PDF so I can email it. And let's do this. I'll go ahead and find out from our team members at Survivor Fitness if I can get your contact information to send it out. But if not, on this final page here, I do have my email address. Feel free to reach out to me. So if any questions come to mind, you want to maybe dig a little bit deeper into some of the topics, I know we kept it quite high level today. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Be happy to talk, send you the presentation, anything at all that you need as a follow-up.
Susie, I was going to ask you, you mentioned sprouts, and I like sprouts when I like eat them at restaurants, but I've never bought them. I don't really know how to go about buying them.
Yeah, good question. So, and it's funny, I put a little hot tip in my notes and I skipped right over it. It's kind of like you're reading my mind today. The best way to find sprouts, I've seen them at grocery stores and they come in a little plastic package. But if you want to get the most benefit from sprouts and the most nutrients, find them when they're still in soil. And the places that I've seen is like farmers markets. They'll usually have them in a little container where they're still planted in the soil. You can trim off the top layer and they'll continue to grow back so you can keep enjoying them. You can also order kits and grow your own. I've done that in the past as well.
Will they just like indefinitely grow?
Mhm.
Oh,
They will.
shoot. Okay. I don't know where I thought I heard that like you like grow them and then you have to like plant it like that they only grow once when you harvest them. And so I had never bothered like putting in the effort, but I didn't realize that they just grow back. That's really cool.
They do. And some sprouts, like I'll tell you with the broccoli sprouts or like pea tendrils, things like that, they'll only grow back probably about 2 or 3 times after you harvest them. But then there's like Brussels, like the sprouts for Brussels, I know those will grow back. So that's just been my
Yeah.
personal experience, but usually they will continue to come back with the exception of a few.
Cool.
Yeah, good question. All right, anybody else?
You mentioned the golden latte. Is coffee known to cause any type of issues? Is that like why you suggest maybe trying an alternative or
Yeah, good question. So I wouldn't say you have to replace your coffee with the golden latte. That's why I mentioned I think the golden latte is a really great thing to have at night because there's nothing that's a stimulant in it. It's very calming to your digestive system, helps to bring down inflammation. With coffee, there isn't necessarily an inflammatory response if you have organic coffee. Too much caffeine absolutely can overstimulate you and give you some issues. So if you do drink coffee, I would just make sure you choose organic and maybe err towards going half decaf, half caffeinated if you struggle with caffeine, but no need to replace it entirely. Good questions. Anybody else? Might have something else in the chat real quick. Allergy response and inflammation. Yes. So when you have a histamine response to something, that is your body. It's kind of the same process as when you have an inflammatory response. So a histamine response, your body releases histamines to try to push out a toxin. And that's what inflammation in your body is also trying to do. So I'm not saying when you have seasonal allergies, that's necessarily a lot of dangerous inflammation. But if you have an allergy to foods and you continue to consume them despite the negative reactions that you get, that does cause inflammation over time. An overactive histamine response can actually be an indication that your gut is unhealthy. If you find out suddenly you're developing allergies to things that you never had a problem with before, you may want to get your gut checked because that's where the histamine response actually begins. So really great question. Does it matter if the coconut milk is full fat or can it be low fat? Another good question. So I would say with the benefits of anything like this, I would go full fat. However, if you are trying to watch your calories or you don't like the consistency of full fat coconut, low fat is still okay. It's still in that medium saturated fat category. You're still going to get the benefits. Anything that's considered low fat in the liquid world is just a watered down version. So you're still getting benefits. You just have to have a little bit more to get the full benefits, if that makes sense. Good questions. All right, I'll put it out there one more time. Any other thoughts or questions? All right, fantastic. Well, I will follow up and see if I can get you all the presentation. Like I said, if not, please feel free to reach out to me. And if you did enjoy the little snippet of some recipes, I've included my Instagram, my Facebook, as well as YouTube. I do share a lot of nutrition information as well as some recipe instruction that go into a little bit more detail. So really appreciate you following up with that. And I think we have one more question in the chat. I don't want to leave anybody behind. Difference in added sugar and natural sugars in fruits. So, and that's another really good question. People talk about sugar in fruits, but here's really the difference between added sugar and natural sugars in fruits. We all know that fruits have been modified over the years to be much larger and in some cases sweeter than they used to be in the past. What makes them still okay to consume, even in larger quantities, is their fiber content. So when you consume a lot of fiber with those natural sugars, that balances out your blood sugar levels. You won't have a spike like you typically do. And if you are someone who wears a glucose monitor and you find that fruits do tend to spike your blood sugar, eat protein with it. Just don't have them naked, is the saying. Have a good slow carb and have a protein with it, and that should be able to balance that out quite a bit. All right, love the follow-up dialogue. All right, fantastic, everybody. Well, thank you so much for all your participation and great questions. It was such a pleasure to get to talk with all of you today, and hopefully I'll be back soon. So enjoy all your information that you received and have a wonderful night. Thanks, everybody.